That's probably pretty relevant to all of us these days. Mobile banking security. We're all using our phones for pretty much everything, and banking is definitely no exception. So we're going to really dig deep today. We've got a fantastic source document here. It's packed with insights, and we're going to go way beyond the basics. We're talking about how banks are fighting to keep our money safe in this crazy world of cyber threats. So buckle up and get ready to unlock some serious knowledge.
Yeah, it's really incredible how fast this field is evolving. I mean, it's like a constant arms race, You've got the banks building these super high-tech vaults, and then on the other side, you've got these digital bank robbers. They're constantly coming up with new ways to break in.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of those digital bank robbers, let's talk about some of the biggest challenges facing mobile banking security today. Our document highlights 4 major hurdles. So first up, we've got the ever-evolving threat landscape. These cyber criminals are relentless. It's like they're digital shapeshifters constantly adapting their tactics, always looking for new vulnerabilities to exploit.
Absolutely. And as soon as the security experts develop a new defense, well, the attackers are already trying to figure out how to get around it. It really is a never-ending game of cat and mouse.
And what makes it even trickier is that sometimes we, the users, we actually make their jobs easier without even realizing it. The document calls this user behavior, and it's a huge challenge. I mean, think about it. We've all been there. Maybe we've used a banking app on public Wi-Fi, not really thinking twice about it, or clicked on a link that seemed a little too good to be true.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic human error. It's often the weakest link in the whole security chain. I mean, you can have the most sophisticated technology in the world, but a single careless click can compromise the entire system.
It's true. And then to add even more complexity, we have device diversity. I mean, think about the sheer number of devices people are using for banking these days. You've got Androids, iPhones, tablets. It's mind-boggling.
It's a nightmare for banks trying to secure all of them. I mean, it's like trying to build a single lock that fits every door in the world, and every operating system has its own quirks and vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And then finally, we've got what our document calls the ghosts of banking past. Legacy systems. Some banks are still running on these older computer systems that weren't designed for today's digital threats. It's like trying to fight a modern-day battle with medieval armor.
Yeah, those legacy systems can be a real Achilles heel. They might be reliable in some ways, but they often just lack the flexibility and agility to implement modern security measures effectively.
So we've got all these threats lurking out there, but it's not all doom and gloom, right? I mean, banks are fighting back. Our document details 10 key components of mobile banking security. And let me tell you, some of this stuff sounds straight out of a spy movie.
Well, they do say truth is stranger than fiction. All these components, they work together to create a multi-layered defense system. It makes it much harder for attackers to slip through the cracks.
Okay, so let's break it down. Let's start with multi-factor authentication, or MFA, as the cool kids call it. It's like having multiple locks on your digital vault. You need more than just your password to get in. We're talking security codes sent to your phone, fingerprint scans, even facial recognition.
Right. MFA, it significantly reduces the risk of unauthorized access, even if one factor is compromised. It's like that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. By diversifying the ways to prove your identity, you make it that much harder for someone to impersonate you.
I like that. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And speaking of proving your identity, biometric authentication is becoming more and more common these days. Fingerprint scanners, facial recognition. They're not just for unlocking our phones anymore. But are they really more secure than traditional passwords? I mean, could someone replicate my fingerprint? Or use a photo to trick the facial recognition system?
It's a good question. And it's something that security researchers are constantly testing and refining. No system is foolproof, of course. But biometrics generally offer a higher level of security than passwords alone. Think about it. Your fingerprints, your facial features, they're unique to you. Replicating them with enough accuracy to fool a biometric system, well, is far more challenging than simply guessing or stealing a password.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Mhm.
But what about contextual authentication? That's a term I haven't heard before. It sounds a little like Big Brother is watching my every move.
Well, contextual authentication, it's all about looking for patterns and flagging anything that's out of the ordinary. So let's say your bank knows you typically log in from your home Wi-Fi network in the evenings. If suddenly someone tries to access your account from a different country in the middle of the night, well, that raises a red flag. The system can then step in to verify your identity, or even block the suspicious activity altogether.
So it's like having a digital detective constantly analyzing my behavior, looking for any signs of foul play. That's pretty impressive. But what about the data itself? How is it protected while it's just sitting there in the bank system? Or even more importantly, while it's traveling between my phone and the bank's servers?
Right. Well, that's where data encryption comes in. It's essentially a way of scrambling your information into an unreadable code so that even if someone intercepts it, they can't make sense of it without the decryption key. It's like a secret language that only the intended recipient can understand.
Okay, that makes sense. Our document mentions AES and SSL/TLS protocols as common encryption methods. Can you break those down for us? They sound pretty technical.
Sure, AES stands for Advanced Encryption Standard. It's a powerful algorithm that uses complex mathematical functions to transform your data into an unbreakable code. It's like a super strong lockbox for your information. And SSL/TLS, or Secure Sockets Layer Transport Layer Security. Those are protocols that encrypt data while it's traveling across the internet. You can think of them as creating a secure tunnel that protects your information from prying eyes as it journeys between your phone and the bank's server.
So we've got encryption to protect our data at rest and in transit. But what about the apps themselves? I mean, they're the gateway to our accounts, so they must be pretty secure, right?
Absolutely, and that's where secure app development practices come in. It's like building a house. You wouldn't build a house with flimsy materials and unlocked doors, would you? Developers need to take extra care to build banking apps that are resistant to attacks. They use specialized techniques like code obfuscation, which makes the app's code incredibly complex and difficult to reverse engineer. It's like someone trying to steal the blueprints of a building, but finding them written in a secret code.
Like building a fortress around your code. And just like our phones need regular updates to fix bugs and improve performance, banking apps need constant security updates too, right?
Absolutely. Think of security updates as booster shots for your apps. They patch up vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit and ensure that the app is always running with the most up-to-date defenses.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's be honest. Sometimes we as users are the weakest link in the chain. So what can we do to make sure we're not making it easy for the bad guys?
Well, user behavior plays a huge role in mobile banking security. But the good news is there are some simple steps we can take to protect ourselves. One of the most important is to be mindful of device security. Treat your phone like the key to your financial kingdom.
So we're talking strong passwords, biometric locks, and maybe thinking twice before downloading that sketchy app from a random website.
Exactly. Strong passwords and biometric locks, they act as the first line of defense. And avoiding things like jailbreaking or rooting your phone can prevent vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit. And as for those random apps, always download from official app stores and read the reviews carefully. Better to be safe than sorry.
And I can't let this go without mentioning the dangers of public Wi-Fi. I mean, it's so tempting to connect to that free Wi-Fi at the coffee shop. But how risky is it really when it comes to mobile banking?
Public Wi-Fi networks are often unsecured, which means that anyone with the right tools can potentially snoop on your online activity. It's like sending a postcard through the mail. Anyone along the way can read what you've written. If you absolutely must use public Wi-Fi for banking, consider using a VPN.
Ah, yes, the trusty VPN. They create a secure, encrypted tunnel for your internet traffic. Makes it much harder for hackers to intercept your data. It's like sending that postcard in a sealed envelope.
Exactly. Now, while individual vigilance is crucial, let's not forget that banks have a responsibility to be proactive about protecting our accounts, too. What about fraud detection? Are banks just sitting back and waiting for something bad to happen? Or are they actively monitoring transactions for suspicious activity?
I really hope it's the latter. It would be pretty unsettling to think that they're just waiting for someone to drain my account before taking action.
Fortunately, banks are taking fraud detection very seriously. They have Sophisticated systems in place that are constantly analyzing transactions and looking for red flags.
So it's like having a digital detective working behind the scenes, constantly scanning for any signs of trouble.
Precisely, they use algorithms and machine learning to analyze vast amounts of data and identify patterns that might indicate fraudulent activity. Things like sudden, large purchases transactions in a different country, multiple failed login attempts. Those can all trigger alerts and investigations.
That's reassuring to know. But even with all this amazing technology working behind the scenes, I have a feeling user education is still paramount, right? I mean, no matter how secure the system is, if we're clicking on phishing links or sharing our passwords with strangers, well, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot.
You're absolutely right. User education is absolutely essential. We, the users, are the first line of defense. Recognizing phishing scams, creating strong passwords, being cautious about what we click on and download, these are all crucial habits for staying safe online.
It's like learning self-defense. Knowing how to protect yourself from potential threats can make all the difference. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the ever-evolving threats, the measures banks are taking to protect us, and the importance of our own role in maintaining a secure digital environment. But what about the future of mobile banking security? Are we headed toward a world of even more sophisticated threats? Or are there advancements on the horizon that could make our digital lives even safer? I'm ready to take a peek into the future.
We'll hold on tight because it's going to be a wild ride. In part 2, we'll delve into the exciting and maybe even slightly unnerving world of what's next for mobile banking security. Get ready to explore some mind-blowing advancements that might make you feel like you're living in a sci-fi movie. So, are you ready to step into the future of mobile banking security? Our source document hints at some pretty incredible advancements, some of which might even sound a little like science fiction.
I am so ready. I love a good dose of futuristic tech, especially when it's designed to keep my hard-earned money safe.
Well, get ready because first up we have something called enhanced biometrics. Imagine your phone recognizing not just your face or fingerprint, but how you type, or even how you hold your phone. It's like adding another layer of uniqueness to your digital fingerprint.
Whoa, that sounds incredibly sophisticated, but honestly, part of me finds it a little creepy. I mean, it's one thing to unlock my phone with my face, but having my every tap and swipe analyzed, it feels like a whole new level of surveillance. Where do we draw the line between security and privacy?
That's a great question, and it's a debate that's happening right now as these technologies are being developed. Finding the right balance between security and privacy is absolutely crucial. It's not about creating some Orwellian dystopia where every move is tracked, but rather about using these advancements responsibly to enhance security without infringing on personal liberties.
Right, it's all about finding that sweet spot. Speaking of powerful technologies, our document also mentions artificial intelligence, or AI. It seems like AI is infiltrating every aspect of our lives these days, and banking is no exception.
You're absolutely right. AI is poised to be a game changer for mobile banking security. Think of it as a superpowered detective that never sleeps, constantly analyzing vast amounts of data to identify patterns and anomalies that humans might miss.
So AI is like the ultimate fraud watchdog, sniffing out suspicious activity before it even becomes a problem.
Exactly. AI can process information at a speed and scale that humans simply can't match, which makes it incredibly effective at detecting fraud in real time. For example, imagine AI monitoring millions of transactions, learning normal spending patterns, and then flagging anything that deviates significantly from those patterns.
That sounds amazing. But doesn't it also raise concerns about potential bias? I mean, if AI is learning from past data, couldn't it inadvertently perpetuate existing biases in the financial system?
That's a valid concern, and it's something that developers are very aware of. The goal is to create AI systems that are not only effective, but also fair and unbiased. This involves careful selection of training data, ongoing monitoring for unintended bias, and continuous refinement of the algorithms to ensure that they are making decisions based on objective criteria.
So it's like teaching the AI to be a fair and impartial judge. Okay, so we've got superpowered biometrics and AI working behind the scenes. What else is in store for the future of mobile banking security?
Well, our document also talks about something called zero trust architecture. It's a security model built on the principle of never trust, always verify. It means that no user or device is automatically trusted, even if they're inside the bank's network.
So it's like assuming everyone is a potential threat until proven otherwise. That sounds a bit intense.
It might seem that way. But in today's threat landscape, it's a necessary approach. With cyber attacks becoming increasingly sophisticated, the old model of building a fortress around your network and trusting everyone inside, it's just not enough anymore.
So how does zero trust actually work in practice? I mean, are they going to make me jump through hoops every time I want to check my balance?
Not necessarily. It's more about implementing multiple layers of security checks throughout the entire system. For example, imagine you're logging into your banking app. With Zero Trust, the system might verify your identity, check the security of your device, analyze your location, and even monitor your behavior during the session.
So it's like having a virtual security guard constantly watching your every move, but in a way that's designed to be seamless and unobtrusive.
Exactly. The goal is to make security as invisible and frictionless as possible for the user, while still providing a robust level of protection against potential threats.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. Now let's move on to something I've heard a lot about, but still find a bit mysterious. Blockchain. How does this technology fit into the future of mobile banking security?
Blockchain has the potential to be a real game changer for mobile banking security. It's a decentralized and distributed ledger technology, which means that records of transactions are not stored in a single location, but rather spread across a network of computers.
So it's like having a million copies of the same book.
Yeah.
So if someone tries to tamper with one, everyone else knows about it?
That's a great way to put it. This makes blockchain incredibly resistant to fraud and tampering, because any changes to the ledger would have to be accepted by a majority of the network.
Okay, I'm starting to understand why people are so excited about blockchain. But how would it actually be used in mobile banking? Can you give me a concrete example?
Absolutely. Imagine you're sending money to a friend using a mobile banking app. With blockchain, the transaction details would be recorded on the blockchain ledger, and that record would be virtually unchangeable. This could help to prevent fraudulent transactions and provide a transparent and auditable trail of all financial activity.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. It sounds like blockchain could make mobile banking significantly more secure. But what about all the buzz around decentralized finance, or DeFi, and digital currencies? Our document mentions them briefly, but I'm curious to know more about the security challenges they pose.
DeFi refers to financial applications built on blockchain technology, aiming to create a more open and accessible financial system. Digital currencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum are often used in DeFi platforms, and they bring a whole new set of security challenges because they operate outside traditional financial systems.
It sounds like the Wild West of finance. I mean, if there's no central authority controlling things, how do we ensure that everything is secure and above board?
It's true that DeFi and digital currencies present unique security challenges. Since they operate in a decentralized manner, there's no single point of control or regulation like traditional banks. This can make them more susceptible to attacks, scams, and vulnerabilities in the underlying code.
So how are banks and regulators approaching these challenges? Are they just trying to shut down DeFi altogether? Or are they finding ways to adapt and integrate these new technologies into the existing financial system?
It's a bit of both, actually. Some regulators are taking a cautious approach, implementing stricter rules and oversight to mitigate the risks associated with DeFi and digital currencies. Others are taking a more collaborative approach, working with innovators in the DeFi space to find ways to harness the potential of these technologies, while also addressing security concerns.
It's a delicate balancing act, isn't it? On the one hand, you have the potential for innovation and greater financial inclusion. But on the other hand, there are legitimate concerns about security and stability. Okay, so we've talked about all these amazing technologies, from superpowered biometrics and AI to blockchain and DeFi. But with all this talk about the future, it's easy to forget about the present. Are there any best practices that banks and individuals can implement today to bolster their security?
Absolutely. In fact, our source document highlights some key best practices that are just as relevant today as they will be in the future. We'll dive into those in the next part of our deep dive. All right, so we've explored the challenges, we've peeked into the future, and now it's time to get practical. What can banks and individuals do right now to boost mobile banking security?
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, it's great to dream about all the cool tech that's coming down the pipeline, but we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to stay safe today.
Absolutely, and our source material actually highlights some key best practices that every financial institution should be following. First and foremost, regular security audits are crucial. Think of it like taking your car in for a tune-up. You want to make sure everything is running smoothly and catch any potential problems before they turn into major breakdowns.
So being proactive rather than reactive. Instead of waiting for a breach to happen, they're actively looking for weaknesses in their systems and addressing them before hackers can exploit them.
Exactly. And just as important as preventing attacks is knowing how to respond if one does occur. Banks need to have a solid incident response plan in place.
It's like having a fire drill, but for cyber attacks. Everyone knows what to do, who to contact, and how to contain the damage as quickly as possible.
Precisely. A well-rehearsed incident response plan can mean the difference between a minor inconvenience and a full-blown crisis. But technology is only part of the equation. Our source material also emphasizes the importance of creating a security culture within the organization.
So it's not just about having the right tools and systems in place. It's also about making sure that everyone in the organization is on board with security best practices.
Exactly. Security is everyone's responsibility, from the CEO to the newest intern. Employees need to be aware of the risks, understand the importance of security protocols, and feel empowered to report any suspicious activity.
So it's about fostering a culture of vigilance, where everyone is on the lookout for potential threats, rather than just assuming someone else is taking care of it.
Exactly, and it's not just about internal security. Banks need to engage with their customers too.
Oh, that's a good point. After all, the users are often the first line of defense when it comes to mobile banking security.
Right. Banks should provide clear and accessible channels for customers to report security concerns or suspicious activity. They should also be proactive about educating users about best practices, like recognizing phishing scams, creating strong passwords, and avoiding risky behaviors.
So it's about building a partnership between banks and their customers, working together to create a safer digital environment. So what can we do as individuals to protect ourselves? I mean, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the threats out there.
Well, a lot of it comes down to common sense and good digital hygiene. Be wary of suspicious emails or messages, especially those asking for personal or financial information.
Right, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. Use strong, unique passwords for all your accounts and enable multi-factor authentication whenever possible.
It's like locking your front door and setting the alarm system. Multiple layers of protection are always better than one.
And be cautious about what you click on and what you download. Malicious software can lurk in unexpected places. Keep your devices and apps up to date with the latest security patches.
It's like getting regular software vaccinations to protect against those pesky digital viruses.
That's a great analogy. And as we discussed earlier, be extra cautious when using public Wi-Fi. Avoid accessing sensitive information like banking apps on unsecured networks if you must use a VPN to create a secure connection.
Okay, those are all great tips, but it can still feel overwhelming trying to stay ahead of all the threats out there. What's the most important thing for individuals to remember?
I think the key is to be aware, be informed, and be proactive. Don't be afraid to ask questions, report suspicious activity, and take steps to protect yourself. Your security is worth it.
Well said. And on that empowering note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into mobile banking security.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground, from the challenges and trends to the best practices that can help keep us safe in this ever-evolving digital landscape.
And it's clear that mobile banking security is not a static destination. It's an ongoing journey. As technology advances, so too will the threats and the solutions.
So what's the final takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they navigate the world of mobile banking?
I would say this: knowledge is power. The more you understand about the risks and the safeguards, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself. Don't be complacent. Be vigilant, be curious, and be proactive about your security.
That's great advice. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning. There's a wealth of information out there, and we encourage you to continue exploring this fascinating and critically important topic. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.